is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 533. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, what's up, buddy? How goes?
Oh, not a whole lot.
Fresh off of a stream. Super streamer Luis Scott-Vargas, as he has asked me to call him.
Three times this week. I was just practicing for the Mythic Point Challenge this Saturday, so getting my Teamer adventure on. That deck's pretty fun to play.
And you can win some points as a rival towards bigger picture stuff on that. Is that right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah, it's always a little bit like people are figuring it out as they go, especially for this transition season. But you've already got a nice finish under your belt, so hopefully you can chain together a few more. And
yeah, I would certainly be happy with that.
Would be sweet. All right, so for the show this week, we've got Theros Beyond Death sealed, and that is partially because Magic Fest Reno is coming up with a Grand Prix there that is limited. So I know a lot of our North American listeners are planning on heading over there. And of course, this comes up in a lot of qualifying type scenarios where sealed is the format of choice. And it is time for us to cover Theros for that. Before we get into it, let's mention our sponsor, channelfireball.com. Now, one of the things I'm always talking about here and urging our listeners to do is to check out the buy list. That's channelfireball.com/buy list, because look, we all know it, right? Magic's an expensive hobby, especially if you want to keep up with Constructed or a Commander deck or a Canadian Highlander deck or whatever. You're going to need to get the cards for it. And sometimes that means trading in the cards that you're not using anymore, either for store credit, which is kind of what I always push people to do when they go to CFB, because you usually get a 30% bonus. There's actually even more, because there's actually a really cool thing. A wild promotion, Buy List Bonanza, is happening, and it's starting March 1st. So it's going to go for the whole month of March, and it features two different types of giveaways. So the first one is a daily giveaway. And Luis, why don't you break down how the daily giveaway works?
So every day, we're going to start it on March 12th, because what will happen is anyone who submits a buy list order of $25 or more is eligible for the daily giveaway. So what that means is you sell us $25 or more worth of cards. Once we receive the cards, and this is why we're starting March 12th, even though the promotion starts March 1st. Once we receive the cards, then you're entered in the giveaway. And every single day, so for a month, we're going to give away three different things. A golden ticket, which is an entry to any Magic Fest or event at a Magic Fest. Some high value events like random, like Chaos, $200 Chaos Drafts, I think, don't apply. But golden ticket gets you into pretty much any event. An Ikoria booster box, that's the next set. And a daily double, which means you get paid for your buy list a second time. So let's say you sold $120 worth of cards and you won the daily double, you get $240.
That's
so how that
sweet.
works is basically on March 12th, because you have 10 days to get us the cards. That accounts for some shipping times. And then starting on March 12th and running through April 12th. So we're going to do a month of this. It's basically, we're going to do this daily giveaway. So we're going to give away 30 golden tickets, 30 Ikoria booster boxes, and 30 daily doubles over the course of the month. There's just a little bit of lag to start it, because again, we want to have the cards in hand before we do the giveaway, just to make sure everything's on the up and up. So that means any order is eligible starting March 1st. So starting this coming Sunday, once you send in an order of $25 or more of cards you're selling to us, you're eligible for this daily giveaway.
Yeah, that's sweet. And then also there's an even bigger giveaway, the monthly giveaway. And how does a monthly giveaway break down?
So the monthly giveaway is wild. So first of all, the prizes, starting at the top, we're giving away a Black Lotus, an unlimited Black Lotus.
Sweet. That's awesome.
$1,000 store credit, a case of Masters 25, a case of Iconic Masters, a case of Ikoria, a foil Gaia's Cradle, a foil Jace the Mind Sculptor, and a playset of Underground Seas.
Dude, those are sweet prizes.
So the way to win these prizes is every $25 worth of value that you sell us, in a buy list order, gets you one entry. So if you sold us $100 worth of cards, you get 4 entries. If you sold us $1,000 worth of cards, you get 40 entries. And at the end of the month, again, this is basically buy list submitted in March. So, March 1st through 31st. We're at the end of the month, we're going to figure out, how many entries total there are, and then randomly determine who wins each of these prizes. Actually, I'm going to be streaming that.
Oh, really? Oh, that's super cool.
So we're going to be doing the giveaways on stream. So you don't have to tune into the stream to find out if you won. We'll email you. But but look, we're giving away a Black Lotus. We're giving away $1,000 store credit, 3 cases of different sets, including 2 master sets, a playset of Underground Seas, foil Gaia's Cradle foil Jace. Like, this is the biggest giveaway /sale /contest we've ever run.
Yeah, this is super sweet. I want to win a Black Lotus. Come on, give me that.
Sell
Black
some cards.
Lotus.
All you got to do is sell some cards. There's even
I'm
one
be
more
digging,
part
don't
of
worry.
this. The entire month of March, if you choose store credit as the payout option, you get a 35% bonus. That's up from 30%, which is what we normally do.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So if you sell us $1,000 worth of cards but want the store credit bonus, you can end up with $1,350 worth of cards. So a $1,350 store credit. So you're going to end up getting a lot more value for your cards if you want to use that credit to buy other cards. The giveaway amounts, like when we're looking at every $25, that of course goes off the cash prices, though you can still choose to get paid out in store credit.
That's right. Yeah. So now's the time. If you've had some cards in a drawer or in a deck box or somewhere hidden in the back of your cabinet, it's time to go dig them out, because there are some awesome prizes that you can win both on a daily and the monthly giveaway, and it's up to 35% store credit bonus. So you can just keep that on there. Wait for the next set that you want to come out and buy a box of it, for example. I know a lot of people that do that. Then they'll hold the draft at their house. They'll just let their friends draft with their box, and then they'll just collect the cards at the end. And then anything that they got, send it back to Channel Fireball, get the 35% in this case, or sometimes, the generally 30% bonus, and then, put that towards the next box. And, you can take a good dent out of it. It's a great way to mitigate that. So Buy List Bonanza, that's channelfireball.com/buy list. That starts on March 1st, and the prizes will be dispersed daily starting on March 12th. That gives you, a good 10 days to get your cards over to Channel Fireball. And
if you head on over to Channel Fireball, you'll be able to see the full rules for this. We'll have a landing page for that as well. But okay. I mean, look, the whole month of March, you're not going to get a better deal than selling cards to Channel Fireball. You just aren't. All these extra prizes on top, it can add up to quite the bonanza indeed. Plus, you're just getting 35% of store credit bonus if you're looking to pick up other cards. And, this is the place to sell cards, and we would love to buy your cards this month.
Yeah, you can tell. You have made that abundantly clear. So check that out, channelfireball.com/buy list. The show is, of course, brought to you by you via the Patreon. All the information is there at patreon.com/limited resources. One of the bonuses you get is you get to submit questions for the question of the week. This one comes from Patrick, who says, what are your opinions on 5-color good stuff decks in draft? Well, you asked the right people about this one. I'll tell you that. Should we give him our professional working opinion, or should we give him our our behind the scenes, what we really love opinion?
Well, I actually think so. It's kind of interesting. I actually think that the 5-color draft decks in Theros are playable.
Yeah, you can actually do them if you get enough amulets, can't you?
Well, Amulet, Unknown Shores, and Altar of the Pantheon all help fix. And if you're especially playing cheaper cards, then Unknown Shores is not that bad. It actually does the thing you want it to do. Mm-hmm. So this format in particular does lend itself to letting you play those. Like, you can be like green-black base with, like, let's say 2 Omen of the Hunts, 1 Amulet, 1 Unknown Shores, and splash multiple other colors, which I've done. But in some formats, it's more of a fool's errand.
Yeah, I mean, the professional answer is that it's almost always incorrect to do so unless the format explicitly supports it. Even in scenarios like the one that Luis is describing here for Theros, I usually only go to 4 colors, and oftentimes the 4th color has 1 card. Because I usually find that just playing straight up 5-color nonsense isn't really necessary. You can still build a more consistent and oftentimes more powerful deck by not going too crazy on the colors. Some sets, of course, lend themselves to that, in which case green light. I love sets that let you do that. They're super fun to play. They make life a little tricky when it comes to like fetching lands or cycling for them or knowing what to go search up and what you might draw and all that kind of stuff. But, in your average limited set, it's just not a thing. And if you do try it, sure, have some fun with it, but don't kid yourself. Usually you'll find yourself losing a lot more often to your mana base than you will even to your opponents. So there you go, Patrick. Love 5-color good stuff decks. Do not recommend them unless the format explicitly supports them. Let's do some crack-a-packs. We're doing sealed this time, and when you crack packs for sealed, it's like it doesn't, there's really no choice there. You just look at them. So I figured we take this chance, Luis, to crack a couple of mystery boosters. These ones were given to us by Richard, whom I met at GP Phoenix. Thank you, Richard. That was really nice of you to give these to the show. And I have to say, Luis, Mystery Booster is so sweet. I got to do more of them at this GP Phoenix. We finished coverage a little bit early. So me, Martin Yuza, Riley Knight, and Maria Bartholdi, we all jumped into a couple of Mystery Booster queues, and we drafted some sweet ones. In fact, I just have to tell this story, Luis, because it was really funny. In our first one, Riley drafted, he said it was the best deck he's ever drafted. And, he's not like a draft junkie like we are. So, I was kind of like, well, let's see what he's got. It was completely insane. He had this like Commander Angel that you can flash in and exile all attacking creatures. That's pretty good. It's like 7 mana, 5/4 flyer or something. He also had Gideon Jura, which is like one of the best limited cards ever, as well as Skull Clamp in his deck, which is another one of the best, I guess, just cards ever / limited cards ever. And he ended up playing against Martin Yuza. Martin opens up Grave Titan in booster draft and doesn't take it. He passed it to the guy on his right.
Only Martin. Like Martin's actually disciplined enough to do that.
Yeah, the guy to his right's like, what is going on? I just got past Grave Titan in a booster draft. Martin took Form of the Muldrifter, which is a playtest
that card is insane.
It is insane. And he just wanted to play it. It's 4 and a blue enchantment. When it ATBs, you draw 2 cards, and all your creatures can be Muldrifters. You can cast them as a Muldrifter. He also, by the way, got an actual Muldrifter, which I thought was just a little too much. Come on, Martin. Anyway, he plays against Riley in the finals of that draft, and Riley just dismantles him, and Martin's just like, my God, this deck is just completely insane. So then we jump into another queue. And in the first round, Riley plays against Martin again. And Riley hasn't really been talking much during the draft. We don't really know what he has. He presents his deck to Martin, who picks it up and shuffles and goes, he's like, is this 40 cards? And Riley's like, ish. And it's not. It's 53 cards. And if you've played the set, there's this demon. It's like a 4/3 flyer for 3 mana, and it like does 4 damage to you when it ETBs. But if you started if your library had starting cards of 13 more than the minimum, you get to Demonic Tutor instead. So this is an indicator, if you've played the format, that Riley has one of these demons. So anyway, but Martin doesn't know that at all. And he's like, whatever. So Riley plays on turn 3, he plays this demon. And Martin's like, well, what does this do? And he's like, oh my God, like this card's insane. So Riley goes and searches up another card, and he just lays it face down. He doesn't put it into his hand. He wants Martin to know that that's the card that he went and searched up. And Martin's like, okay, whatever. So Martin does a thing and passes the turn back to Riley, who flips over the card, and it's another copy of that demon. And remember, this set has like 1,700 cards in it, and he somehow got 2 of them. So then he searches up another card, and Martin's like, this is just, he's like making a big deal out of it and hamming it up. It was really funny. So then Martin makes some play where he double blocks or triple blocks or uses 2 removal spells or whatever to take down one of the demons, and kind of gets it narrowed down just the one, and thinks, okay, I might be able to like come back or whatever. And then Riley plays some Raise Dead that he had gotten with the other demon, gets the demon back, and then replays it and goes and searches up another card. And Martin's just like, we're done here.
Riley, I remember this actually. Riley was just schooling Martin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Schooling the Hall of Famer, and he was loving every minute of it too. Make no mistake. Anyway, Mystery Booster is awesome. It plays out like Chaos Draft, except for without the things that I don't like about Chaos Draft. Because I always feel like Chaos Draft is a little bit of like a race to the bottom, where I'm just trying to assemble this pile of good cards, basically, but synergies kind of go out the window. All of the almost all the cards in this set are like cube-ish cards. So it's very varied, and like playing a massive cube, if you will. So it has a feel of a Chaos Draft because the cards are from a very wide range of years. But it doesn't have that thing where you're like, well, here's a 4/4 for 4. Can't wait to take that card. And here's a removal spell. Can't wait to take that. And that ends up being your whole deck. So let's open one of these, especially because some people, I'm sure, who are going to go to the GP and to other GPs are going to be wanting to play Mystery Boosters. They're a big draw at those tournaments. Our first card is Soul Summons. And by the way, you'll notice that the way that these were collated, it actually goes in Wooburg order, and you get 2 of each common. So it's actually interesting because you can read signals a lot easier in this set, because if somebody takes a common and passes the pack to you, you literally know what color it is. Like you can't not know what color it is. So that's kind of interesting little wrinkle if you haven't done Mystery Booster. Soul Summons, 1 and a white sorcery, manifests the top card of your library, so it becomes a 2/2 face down, and if it's a creature, you can pay its mana cost to turn it face up. Blade Instructor, 2 and a white, 3/1 with Mentor. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly just because. I mean,
the bar for a first pick Mystery Booster is going to be pretty high.
Right. And also, I mean, I know like there's a lot going on with these, and I just don't want to go into super depth about every single card. In Soul Artifact, this one's actually an uncommon, but it's in the common slot, so I guess it's common here. It's 1 and a blue. Enchant Artifact. The artifact becomes a 5/5 creature. So that's kind of cool. Ooh, one of my favorites. Oh my God. Ninja of the Deep Hours. 3 and a blue, 2/2. Human ninja, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, but it has ninjutsu for 1 and a blue. So if a creature that you're attacking with goes unblocked, you can pay 1 and a blue to swap in an attacking ninja of the Deep Hours for that creature. And of course, the sick tech is when you pick up a creature that has an enter the battlefield ability, you get the card off of this and you get to replay that later and you feel like you're going off. That would be, I would definitely want to take that card out of these ones.
Oh yeah.
Blister Grub, 2 and a black, 2/2 Swamp Walk. When it dies, each opponent loses 2 life. What, you like that one?
No, that's just a funny card. It's not particularly good.
No. Blessing of Belzenlock. That's black for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+1 until end of turn. If it's legendary, it gets lifelink. No. Miner's Bane. This is 4 red for a 6/3, and you can pay 2 and a red to give it +1/+0 and trample until end of turn. Mm-hmm. Pretty bad. Sweatworks Brawler, 3 and a red for a 3/3 with Improvise and Menace. So far, Ninja of the Deep Hour is easy. And this brings us to green, which is Root Out, 2 and a green for a sorcery, destroy target artifact or enchantment, and then investigate. And then Inoc Survivalist, which is 1 and a green for a 2/1, but it has Megamorph, so you can pay it face down for 3 and pay 1 and a green to turn it face up with a +1/+1 counter on it. And when it gets turned face up, it destroys an artifact or an enchantment an opponent controls.
Not what I'd be excited to first pick, but artifact and enchantment removal is quite good in formats like this.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it does do well. All right, uncommons. Vengeful Rebirth. Do you remember this one, Luis?
This is 4 red-green, returns a card from your graveyard to your hand and does damage equal to its cost, something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's a sorcery, and you have to exile it. They don't want you to loop them. But still, yeah. And by the way, nice work. You still got it, buddy. Really good card, especially for the type of decks that we were just talking about, the 5-color green decks, if you will. A Vengeful Rebirth can go a long way to getting you a really powerful late game punch. Filigree Familiar, 3 mana, 2/2. When it enters a battlefield, you gain 2 life. When it dies, you draw a card.
I like this one. It's also colorless.
Colorless is nice, yeah. And then it looks like we've opened up 2 rares, or 2 mythic rares, and then the playtest card. The first mythic rare is Aetherios, God of Passage. 1 black-white for a 5/4 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. As long as your devotion to white and black is less than 7, it's not a creature. And whenever a creature you own dies, return it to your hand unless target opponent pays 3 life. What do we think about that card?
I think that it's a little bit too situational. I've played with this card limited before, and it looks like it could do some big things, but most of the time it just doesn't do a whole lot.
Right. Our next one is Teferi Temporal Archmage. This is Planeswalker, 4 blue for a 5 loyalty Teferi.
I assume this is busted. I don't really know what it does, though.
So this is the one that can be your commander.
Mm-hmm.
And +1, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Guess what you do with the other ones? Or guess what you do with them?
Put them in one in your hand, one in the graveyard.
So close. The other one goes on the bottom of your library. Sure. Yeah. So classic +1 draw card, -1 untap up to 4 target permanents. Interesting. And then the ultimate is -10. So basically impossible, but you get an emblem with, you may activate loyalty abilities of planeswalkers you control anytime, or excuse me, on any player's turn, anytime you could cast an instant, which actually isn't really that good. So it's basically just a Howling Mine, a really good Howling Mine. And then
I would still be inclined to lean towards Teferi.
Same. And then, but we've got our playtest card. It's Recyclabird. This is blue for a 1/1 flyer. When it dies, you put a flying counter on target creature you control, which obviously gives it flying. So the cards I like are Teferi Temporal Archmage, Vengeful Rebirth. I like Filigree Familiar, but I'm not taking it. And then
you should just take Teferi
out of this. I like the Ninja too.
You should just take Teferi out of this pack.
I like Teferi.
It's just an engine, and if you can just get to the point where this card survives, you'll win the game pretty quickly.
Yeah, this is a sweet little pack too, and I'm going to put the Teferi, the Recyclabird, and the Aetherios in our giveaway, which I think we'll probably do next week because it's getting there. Let's do one more mystery booster, and then we'll talk some sealed. And again, thank you to Richard for these. It was very kind of you. All right. First white card is Abzan Runemark. This is 2 and a white for an enchantment. And it's an aura. It enchants a creature. The creature gets +2/+2 and has vigilance as long as you control a black or green permanent. No. Faithbearer Paladin, 4 and a white for a 3/4 lifelinker. Not so much. Gaseous Form. This is our blue one. 2 and a blue enchantment. Enchant creature. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by enchanted creature. Kind of interesting. Oh, here's an old school one, Fathom Seer. So this is 1 and a blue, 1/3 with Morph. And when it is turned face up, you draw 2 cards, and the Morph cost is to return 2 islands you control to your hand.
Yeah, you cast Gush. This card's really sweet.
It's actually kind of cool. Is it good? Is it a good Magic card?
Yeah, it's very strong, yeah.
Okay. Infernal Scarring is 1 and a black for an enchantment. Aura enchants a creature. Creature gets +2/+0. And when it dies, you draw a card. Bad. All right, here's some business. Fatal Push. Boom, baby. That's a nice one. Black, instant, destroy target creature. If it's converted mana cost is 4 or less. If you have Revolt, it can be 4 or less instead. 2 or less into 4 or less, I should say. Krenko's Enforcer, 1 red for a 2/2 Intimidate. Not bad, but not good. All right, here's some business. Desert Ceradon, 5 and a red for a 6/4 with Cycling for red. I like cards like that. Byway Courier, 2 and a green, 3/2. When it dies, you investigate, so you get a clue token. Airy Bowmasters, 2 green for a 3/4 with Reach, and Megamorph for 5 and a green, so you can flip it up and it gets a +1/+1 counter if you played it face down. Here's a good one, Luis. Unlicensed Disintegration. You remember that one?
Oh yeah, 1 red-black, instant, destroy target creature, and then if you control an artifact, your opponent takes 3 damage also.
Yeah, that's a beating. But do you like Fatal Push or Unlicensed Disintegration better?
I would just take Fatal Push just because it's not a gold card. And it's a 1-mana card. This card's super efficient and sometimes can just kill a 4-drop. You just make some sort of trade in combat or sack a Evolving Wild sort of card. Fatal Push is really good.
Yeah, super efficient. Scoured Barrens is next. It's land that taps for black or white and ETBs tapped. You gain a life when it does so. Oh, this next card, I remember this one was a little underrated in its format. Contagion Clasp. So this is 2-mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, you put a -1/-1 counter on a creature, but you can pay 4 and tap it to proliferate. So you choose any number of permanents and or players with counters on them, and you give them an additional one of the kind that's already there. The card's actually really good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's quite strong. I would imagine this format has a lot of weird stuff going on, so Proliferate's actually pretty good there too.
Yeah, that's what I would assume too.
I think I would still just take Fatal Push though. It's just so efficient.
Yeah, it really is. But I might change your mind here. This card, my God, I remember this card really well from when I first started playing. It's Eldrazi Monument. Do you remember this freaking beater of a card?
Oh yeah, this is a 5-cost artifact. It gives all your creatures +1/+1 flying and I think indestructible. But
yeah, you're
the
right.
beginning of your upkeep, you have to sack a creature.
Yeah, and if you can't, then you have to sacrifice the monument.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to get ahead of it. But here's the secret. You cast this card, and if you have any board state at all, you just win. Because it pumps your team and gives them all flying. You just bash your opponent for 2 turns and the game's over. So I like that one a lot. I would certainly take it out of this pack myself. Although, actually, wait, we have our playtest card. It's called Memory Bank, and it's 1 and a blue for a sorcery. It says draw card, and it has the keyword bank. If you cast Memory Bank from your hand, exile it at the end of the match. If you cast it from exile during another game this match, it still counts towards your deck minimum. Or, sorry, you may cast it from exile during another game this match. But it still counts as one of your actual cards. So you play it in game 1, you just cycle it and draw a card. Yeah. But then in the next game, you can present 39 cards and then have this in exile and then cast it.
Yeah, I guess so. So it just
weird.
So basically, the price you have to pay is casting it in the game, but then later it effectively lets you draw. It's a draw 2, but the 2 cards are split up over 2 games.
Right. Kind of weird. I like taking Eldrazi Monument here. What do you like?
Yeah, I would just take Eldrazi Monument and then draft an aggressive deck. It's unfortunate that you have to draft aggro, but I still think it's fine. Eldrazi Monument is you're just going to play this with 3 creatures and play and kill your opponent really quickly.
Yeah, it really doesn't take that much. I remember Woody was obsessed with that card back when we first started playing, and he built multiple decks that he took to PTQs around it with token makers to just keep fueling it. And yeah, it just ends the game very quickly. Okay, let's get into the main topic here. Theros Beyond Death sealed deck. Been playing a bunch of sealed. I've actually was helping Adam prepare for the GP before I knew that I was going to go, but I'm actually going. He talked me into it. I was feeling. I was like, I traveled a ton in February. I probably won't really want to go, but it's in Reno. It's not that far away from me, and I don't get a chance to play in a limited GP that often. So I figured I really better get down there and go. And plus, he's going, and Woody and a bunch of other people I know. So I'm pretty stoked to be there. If you are going to GP Reno, I'll see you there, and maybe we'll even battle. But anyway, I was playing a bunch of sealed to help him, and so I figured, well, this will also help prep for the show, and now it's also prepping for the GP, as it turns out. Typical disclaimer for sealed: it's much slower than draft is. So that much we kind of know going in. That's always the case. Basically, there really hasn't been a set that we've had where that hasn't been true. So that part is true. So the question then becomes, well, what are the little wrinkles? What are the little things that you need to value higher or lower as you go in? And for me, playing out the matches, I have felt very much the need for inevitability. And the name of the game for inevitability in this set is, of course, escape. It's built into the set, right? Everybody that plays any escape cards has the ability to grind into the late game. And so what I've been actually doing is, instead of trying to fight that straight up, I've been trying to focus on cards that actually deal with graveyards a lot more than I normally would. So some of them are cards that you play in draft anyway, like Timuret and Elspeth's Nightmare, which both have overperformed in draft by a lot. Like, they're really, really strong cards. And in no small part because of their ability to mess with your opponent's graveyard. Elspeth's Nightmare is pretty good as a potential 2-for-1 on the front end of it. But the real hidden mode is Chapter 3 that says exile their yard. That ends up having a big effect on the game going forward, much more so than when you first read it and you think, okay, well, there's something at the end of that, whatever. But the main thing is, can I get a 2-powered thing? Can I get a card out of their hand? It actually ends up being that all 3 modes are really impressive. And that's true for Timuret. But even beyond that, I've been main decking Cling to Dust. That's the black instant that lets you exile a card from a graveyard.
I think that's just a main deckable card in draft.
Yeah, you can. I don't always, though. There's a lot of times when it's not quite pulling its weight to main deck, because there's a lot of times when you don't hit anything of relevance, and yeah, it'll usually cycle, so it's not like a big deal or whatever. But I also don't like cards like that, like cards that just cycle. I try to put like action spells in. And so I usually bring it in. I agree with you. It's like not a disaster, but in sealed, I want it. Like I want one of those. Like I feel like it's a key part of actually winning. Return to Nature, similar. You can play a Soul Guide Lantern as well, and Binding of the Titans, even for its ability to exile a few cards, can be huge. Because look, if your game plan is to sit down and be like, I'm going to cast my removal spells against your creatures, and I'm going to win the long game, you will not win the long game. They will escape them back, and everybody has it. And if your deck is built for the long game, which it probably should be in sealed, you're going to have to face their long game too. And if every deck that you face has at least a reasonable long game with escape creatures, even if they're not explicitly built for it, you can't just assume that you can Myers grasp your way out of every situation. So you need ways to deal with the graveyard, and that ends up being huge.
Yeah. So I think that the main takeaway here is that you know how draft is self-correcting, where black's the best color. Everyone knows it. Yet you can't end up, with 5 black drafters every draft because that black's not that good. In sealed, you're going to play against black a huge portion of the time. It's going to be the most common color you see, and black among its best cards are escape cards, particularly Pharika Spawn. So you're going to end up facing down a lot more powerful escape cards than you would in draft, which is why the graveyard hate gets so much better.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And by the way, speaking of colors, the colors that I've gravitated to for sealed have been green, black, and blue. And then I often find myself in 2 of those colors, like green, black, let's say, and then splashing maybe for white or some blue cards. The red cards, I've had a harder time fitting in. I have played it. I opened, you know how it is sometimes when you open up a pool and it looks like you have like a pretty decent draft deck and a color pair. And, I'd say 1 out of every 10 pools or 2 out of every 10 or something like that looks roughly like that. I had a green red deck that was just, it had 2 Warden of the Chained and a bunch of good removal 4-powered stuff and a Furious Rise. And I'm like, okay, I'll just play this. And it was great. It performed well. It curved out. It was actually a nice curveball to what you normally face with more controlling elements. And it was fine. So don't be afraid to do that. But by and large, I haven't found that red's been where I want it to be in sealed at all. And then white, I cherry pick the good cards like Dreadful Apathy and Banishing Light and such, because those are very easily splashable and very much worth it because, once again, they exile, right? Any removal that exiles also goes up. That was already high, so it's not like you need to prioritize it higher than I'm always going to play it anyway. But those are the type of removal spells that are worth splashing for, rather than, the burn spells or whatever that just put your opponent's card in their graveyard and then they can just bring it back again later.
Yeah, and This is also goes back to kind of like old school limited play, where especially after game 1, you'll have a better idea of what your opponent's threats are, and you will do stuff like, all right, I have to save this one final death for their Pharika spawn because I don't really have a great answer to it otherwise, or what, I know they have whatever this great, like they have a Pelucrados or some ridiculous rare. It's critical that I keep my counterspell, like my Deny the Divine, for that, because you're going to go through most of your deck in a lot of games, and in fact, it's worth noting that you should be aware of library sizes. A lot of games will go to decking, and sometimes it's really important that your opponent doesn't know that. So if you're playing in live play when it's not just you can't just hover over their deck and see how many cards are left. One of the best ways to do it is to count everything else they have, their permanents and their cards in hand, and then their graveyard, and then subtract that from 40. Right. So you can do it with yourself as well. So then you can do that, and you can be like, okay, well, I have 19 cards left, and they have like 11 cards left. I guess I'm decking them. Or I have 17 cards left, and they have 18 cards left. And this is why you don't want to alert them to it. If you think the game's going that direction and they know that, they won't cast their Omen of the Sea. But if you don't say anything, there's a chance they cast Omen of the Sea or Relentless Pursuit, and all of a sudden you're winning the decking game.
I can't tell you how many times I've both seen this and also experienced it firsthand, where I looked at my hand and I had 3 good answers and a stable board, and we're both over halfway through our library or whatever. And I thought, realistically speaking, there's no way for this game to end in a reason. Like I said, they can cast 3 more creatures and I still have a stable board and I can counter or kill any problematic ones. It's going to be really tough for them to actually get the job done. And I've started thinking in my head, this could easily come down to decking. And they're just happily running out, funeral rites and just dumping a bunch, it's 4 cards go away from your library when you cast funeral rites, and putting themselves in a position. And they will notice it, physically speaking, like when they pick up a card and their library just feels unusually short. But definitely try to be discreet about it, because lesser experienced players particularly, and even some fairly experienced ones, they're just not used to games going in that way. It happens in booster draft more than normal in this format, but it's still not that common. But in sealed, it really is a very real thing. Another kind of shortcut that you can put in your head is kind of the Mike Sigrist method or whatever. Like, what if we just both turned over our decks, right? And kind of just matched up answers to threats and that kind of thing and said, well, who would win? Some games of sealed play out similarly to that, where I was saying, like, I have 3 answers for cards in my hand and you have 12 cards left in your library. I'm like, well, it's very unlikely that you have 3 more absolute must answer threats and then a 4th one that will kill me. Right. And this is kind of the mentality that you can take into it, is trying to count in that way when the game starts to go really long. And all of a sudden, your library size can be an absolute win condition. Also, there are cards like Sweet Oblivion that you can bring in. I don't recommend playing it in the main deck. It just doesn't do enough. I did actually draft a deck at a local shop last Friday around it. Like, I was like, this is going to be my win condition and I'm going to see how it goes. I ended up going 2-1. And I did deck a bunch of people with it, but it is, when you cast a card from your hand that just straight up does nothing, it is rough. Like, it is really, really tough to, if they have any type of assertive deck, to make.
I mean, we're talking these like super long game, count your opponent's deck, save your removal spell for their big flyer sort of thing. But you'll still lose a game if one of your cards is a blank. If you have a game where you drew like 4 spells and 7 land, but one of those spells was Sweet Oblivion, you could just lose to their 3/3s. So don't go, completely nuts here. You can't build your deck as if every deck was a long game control mirror, though you should bias it in that direction. I would in general play all the counter spells you have. You do just need to make sure you have cards that do something in the early game and that you can sideboard well. One effective sideboard plan can be if you have 2 decks that are very close in terms of which one you think is the right build, but one's aggressive and one's defensive. Try switching between them sometimes, especially if you can do it in a way where they're both sleeved and it's not obvious. I've definitely lost games of sealed where I'm playing like blue-black control, my opponent's playing blue-black control, and then after game 1, I boarded even more blue-black control stuff and they boarded into red-white. And you can completely juke people. So I do want to give you a word of warning. Don't do this if your secondary deck sucks. Like, don't just say like, ooh, I'm going to juke him by boarding into aggro when your aggro deck's bad. It's more the case when it's like, okay, my red-white deck's pretty good, but so is my blue-black deck. Or maybe my red-white deck is pretty good, but so is my like kind of like red-green control, more controlling big stuff deck. And just switch between them if they're close. Yeah. Don't switch from a 8 out of 10 blue black deck to a 6 out of 10 red white deck.
Yeah. And you mentioned counterspells briefly there. I agree. Play them. They're much, much better here, and they're totally fine plays on turn 3 if you need to just, sort of keep your opponent from going off on board, but also really critical because some of the bombs in the format of which you will see, Dream Trawler, Curabessa Sea God, and Ashiok are kind of the trio of unbeatable bombs, if you will. If you can counter them, it's a huge boon for you because the counterspell that you put in is probably just a common. It didn't take some big slot from you. But if you counter a Dream Trawler, specifically with Deny the Divine, it's just gone and you never have to deal with it. Where if you don't, your best case scenario is to get an Entrancing Liar going or try to line up some quadruple block with flyers or some nonsense that probably isn't going to work out. Same thing with Curabessa Sea God. Even if you have an answer for an enchantment in your hand, if they get the 8/8 hexproof, well, it might already be too late for you. You might not lose on the spot because you killed Curabessa Sea God and didn't get the whole tap and steal and all that. But still, they got too much out of it where a counter just answers it cleanly. Unfortunately, Deny the Divine does not counter Ashiok. So another little point to Ashiok. And remember, Ben thinks that Ashiok's the best card in the format. So yeah, keep that in mind.
I couldn't figure out what card you're talking about. Then I remember you were talking about Ashiok. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I'm going off of the official Wizards of the Coast pronunciation guide, Louise. So I can throw the book at you here on this one. One other bias that I like to have is when in doubt, go bigger. It's tempting to try to build like this perfect curve and have, well, I need these 2 drops, so I just got to play this Temple Thief or whatever. I would just play random big drops like Nyxborn Colossus or Brine Giant or whatever over those type of cards. And then you can sideboard into a more lean build if you feel like your opponent's bringing something to the table that can actually kill you. Because what ends up happening is you get a couple of bombs and then they're going to probably have answers for your bombs. And a lot of times whatever's left over is what ends up winning the game. And a Nyxborn Colossus is actually a big threat. It's just something that's kind of difficult to deal with if they don't have the answer, at least in combat. And you can win the game with it. And Nyxborn Colossus and Brine Giant and those type of cards, those are, again, just random commons. It's not like those are taking your bomb slot or your, really great uncommons or whatever. And I would really try to veer in that direction to start off with rather than some junky 2 drops or 3 drops or whatever, just because you feel like, well, I really need to have a good curve. Like I got to have a good creature curve or I'm not going to be able to win. I would kind of make my opponent show me that I needed the good curve and then bring it in. Otherwise, another way to look at it, I'm just willing to take the risk on having a little bit clunkier draws in order to have just more raw power in my deck. Again, going back to like the Sigris method, right? Just turn the deck over. If you give every deck or every card in the deck like a 1 to 10 rating, not on efficiency or whatever, but just on impact, just how much when you play this card does it impact the game? If you make the assumption that you will get to play the cards that you draw during the course of a game, you just want to have higher impact cards, right? And a Temple Thief, even though you're thinking, well, it fills out my curve or whatever, just isn't the same as a Brine Giant or just some other big doofus like that. So my strategy has been to lean towards those. And then if shown that those are going to be too slow in conjunction with my other cards, then I will lean out my deck a little bit from there.
Yeah, and that's the sort of adjustment you may have to make. But I agree. You want to bias larger rather than smaller.
Right. Another little trick is there are some tricks to beat a Dream Trawler. You're going to face Dream Trawler if people open it. If you're in white, you can Flicker of Fate or Rise to Glory back a Dreadful Apathy. It doesn't actually target when it comes back in. It just you choose a target and then you choose a creature to attach it to, and then it gets attached to it. So even if they give their creature hexproof, it doesn't matter. It'll just go on there. Otherwise, you have to use other ways to try to get it out of their hand, like Agonizing Remorse or Aspect of Lamprey, and or try to do, like I said, some triple block. Otherwise, you're just dead to it. But you need to know your outs, right? Like you have to understand that, like, you don't want to burn your Dreadful Apathy if you know your opponent has a Dream Trawler, like on a random creature, and then exile it. You need it to be in play in case you have Flicker of Fate in your deck. So just keep these things in mind for sure. Another thing that's come up a lot for me, along the lines of the inevitability, is the value engines that you can get in the set. There's not a billion of them, but there are some, particularly if you don't have a bomb available. Either you didn't open one, you didn't draw it, or it got killed or exiled or whatever. But, one of my favorites is Shimmerwing Chimera plus Omen of the Sea. If that's what's left over, you're going to win that game pretty easy. You can even combine Shimmerwing Chimera plus Starlit Mantle to really kind of blank, like basically it forces your opponent to have 2 removal spells in one turn if they want to kill one of your creatures. Once you get that set up, Furious Rise, right? That's another good value engine that you can get rolling. You get a 4-power creature and you can start exiling cards and playing them.
One of the few reasons I think you want to be red in this format.
Yeah. Yep, that's true. Nylea, right? The god, in draft sometimes feels a little slow, a little whatever. Here, great place to dump your mana in the late game and fuel you going forward. So, look for these little 1 or 2 card interactions that are repeatable, because that's another way that you can win a game where you don't actually need your bomb to have drawn it or got it into play or whatever. If you can pick up a couple of these cards and combine them together, it's really good. Splashing. We should talk about splashing. I just recommend it. I have been splashing very liberally in sealed. Most of my decks were 3 colors. If I don't splash a third color, it's because I've chosen not to, not because I couldn't, but because I chose that it wasn't good enough to do so. Traveler's Amulet is my favorite way to do so, but Altar of the Pantheon's totally fine. And then you get the green fixing as well, with the Omen of the Hunt and the Caryatid and stuff like that.
I think you're probably like 75% to splash in this format. Mm-hmm. Something like that.
Yeah. For whatever reason, a ton of the cards are splashable. Normally, you'll see a lot of the premium cards get kind of protected by making them double mana symbols so that other people don't take them. But think about the removal in the set, right? Final Death, splashable. Same thing with Myers Grasp. Same thing with Dreadful Apathy. Same thing with Erois' Blessing. And then I guess if you really wanted, you could do Warbriar Blessing, but that's not, really worth it. But I mean, all of the common removal is splashable. You can take all of the final deaths. If you got 2 of those and you're not playing black, you can get those in if you're playing green, and you should. I mean, that's a key answer to have in the deck. And then there's even some of the more expensive bombs can even be splashable as well. We mentioned Ashiok, or what did you call it? Ashiok?
me and every other person who plays Magic,
calls it Ashiok.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I call it Ashiok.
This is a real Kalitas situation.
No, come on. That one I didn't like. This one's like just a little different. But Pelukranos, whatever. There's a whole bunch of cards that you can fit into your deck, particularly if you happen to be in green, and get that splash in there. Now, don't go crazy, right? The episode earlier this week, we talked to Taral Severin about Dream Trawler and trying to make that work. Look, splashing a Dream Trawler is a tall order. Double blue or double white on the splash is going to be extremely difficult. If you have the capability, okay, sure, do it. I mean, Dream Trawler really is that good, but it's unlikely that you do. That is just a really tough card to get in there. But at any rate, yes, splash, you should, and I like it. Cards that I reduce significantly in value are cards that have a smaller effect on the game for an efficient cost. Normally in booster draft, these are actually, kind of exactly what you want in some archetypes. But in sealed, I find that it does become a much more of a brute force affair where it's not really about, curve out efficiency, things like Sentinel's Eyes, Indomitable Will, Aspect of Manticore, Pious Wayfarer, stuff like that. For me in sealed underperforms pretty significantly because it gets outclassed fairly quickly. And you really need to be able to hit hard. Imagine it's a late game and I draw a random 5-drop, a Rune Scarred Berserker or whatever, Rage Scarred Berserker, and you draw Pious Wayfarer or, whatever, Indomitable Will or something like that. These are cards that are fine if you play them on turn 1 or 2 and they can kind of do things for a little while, but very quickly they become outclassed. And my goal when I build a sealed deck is to have almost none of my cards like that. You have to play a few probably, but I really want to minimize those ones that get outclassed really quickly. And I really want my cards to scale with the game if I can, because I do plan on playing a longer game. I just do. And it happens often enough that I think that's a correct thing to do. Heliod's Punishment is another one like that that's just worse.
The kind of cards you want for the early game are cards like Destiny Spinner that is obviously great early game, but also just good in the late game. Like these are the optimal like low drops. Cards like Pious Wayfarer are just, even like Hero of the Pride, are really not going to pull their weight once people start playing 5 and 6 mana spells. So
right, and you should plan on that happening, right? That's kind of the idea. Even cards like Discordant Piper and stuff, a perfectly fine curve filler type card. But, if I can get away with it, I'd prefer like a Cling to Dust over it or something like that. Just something that, gives me that better late game action.
Yeah.
You can main deck a Plummet. You don't have to, but you can. There are tons of flyers and you will see them often. And many of the best cards in your opponent's deck will be flyers. Thassa's Oracle, we love it in draft. It's even better in sealed. You just find yourself in a position where you can build around it more often, and it can be a legit.
Thassa's Oracle's a bomb in sealed. I think if
you
open Thassa's Oracle, you should try very hard to play it in your deck.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's really strong. Another card that I've had twice now, and it really performed better, is Nylea's Intervention. That's the green intervention, which we didn't love it for draft. I mean. But I actually kind of like it in sealed. It's green X sorcery. Nylelia's Intervention deals twice X damage to each creature with flying. So again, you actually can get, you can swipe the board on 2 of their flyers sometimes, or at least a bomb. But the other one is actually good too. Search your library for up to X land cards, reveal them and put them in your hand, then shuffle your library. I played a long game against Adam, and I drew this in the late game. I did it for 8. I only had 7 lands left in my library. I just took all of them out of my library, and my library was just straight, literally all spells for the rest of the game.
Yeah, so. I think that it's it gets a lot of value. This is the kind of card that probably like slightly not good enough for draft, but is definitely good enough for sealed.
Yeah, it's just the combination of things actually ends up being potent because of the amount of flyers that you're going to end up needing to deal with. And so I'd play it. Yeah, so you get the point. As usual, the tendency is towards a slower game. But in this set, the thing that you need to really focus on are repeatable win conditions and how to stop your opponent's repeatable win conditions, and all while keeping an eye on how long the game's going with regards to library size and stuff like that. So there's actually a lot to manage. This is a kind of a tough sealed format because there's so many. It's not just like put your bombs in, cast them, you win the game. There's a ton of removal in this set. There's a ton of ways for people to bring back creatures with escape, and it does often lead to like long-term planning ended up being really important. Like what we were talking about with library size, where if you notice at first that, hey, I should not play this random card draw spell because this actually might be the difference. That can be the difference between winning and losing. And then what I've found is if you are presented with an opponent who has a more streamlined deck, which, again, anything goes in sealed. Sometimes people are just like, hey, look, I open a bunch of red and white gold cards and curve out and I can just beat you down. That does happen. It's just rare. When they do, I have not found it difficult to sideboard into a much more sort of traditional build with cheaper creatures and more interaction and less emphasis on, winning the all out long game. You can cut that cling and all these type of things if you're just getting beaten down. And I'm very willing to change over into a deck that's a little more traditionally built with the curve out and the interaction and stuff like that. But I do feel strongly that the starting point should be leaning in the other direction, where you want to be set up to win the late game and to exile your opponent's cards from their graveyard and to exile their creatures on the battlefield. I mean, just exiling has just never been more important to a sealed format. It's just getting stuff out of the yard and exiling cards from the stack or from play is just absolutely critical. To winning late game because of escape.
Well, just the way Theros is built, your graveyard is part of your active play zone, and so ways to interact with that is really important.
Yeah, good way to put it. Okay, that's all I have for sealed. I hope you opened some bombs, I guess. Well, the bombs still do matter,
I will say that this is not my favorite sealed format, just because some of the bombs are a little bit more than I would prefer.
Okay, the kind of card where if you don't have the answer, you lose.
I talked to a bunch of folks who played at GP New Jersey, and basically once you got to like 6-0, if your opponent played Islands and Plains, they just always had Dream Trawler, like always.
Oh, okay.
And you also have like, Kirobeth the Sea God and Pelucranos and like all these cards that, look, I don't have a problem with like there being good mythic rares, and I think that's totally fine. This set just leans a little bit more in that direction. So from folks who have played a lot of sealed, I have gotten the impression that this is not the most replayable sealed format, but it's not the worst either.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. The bombs really do matter, and there are some absurd ones in this set for sure. One other little tip, by the way, when it comes to Agonizing Remorse, wait on it. For the love of all things, do not cast that card on turn 2 in the sealed format. It is so much better to wait until probably turn 5, is about the sweet spot. Basically, you want to give your opponent the chance to draw their Dream Trawler or Kirobeth the Sea God, and then give you the best chance of taking it out of their hand forever.
Yeah, basically, that's a great point. The longer you can wait on that card, the better. I mean, obviously, if you have a curve that's going to lock you out of playing it the next couple turns, or if you know that they have good cheap cards, like they have like Wavebreak Hippocamp in their deck or something like that, it's the 3 mana 2/2 that draws you extra cards when you play spells on their turn. Like, that's the sort of thing that I would not want to wait on. But for the most part, yeah, you want to give them as many draw steps as possible to find their dream trawler.
Right. And then hopefully take it away from them forever. All right. That's going to do it for this one. If you are playing at GP Reno, I'll be there. You can feel free to come up and say hi. And I'll be hopefully winning a bunch of rounds. Either that or I'll open up like an okay pool, misbuild it, make some mistakes, and be mystery booster drafting the rest of the weekend. I hope that's not what happens. I really don't get the opportunity to play in them too often. Usually only once or twice a year do I get to go to a GP and play. So I do want to try to take advantage. But I learned a lesson from Toralf last week. I'm going to have fun, Luis. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to have fun, even though that has never really worked for me. I like to get dialed in.
I don't know. Look,
he did that at Worlds.
Well, it's easy to have fun when you also win a lot. I'll just say that. Like to get to Worlds, you had to win a Pro Tour, and it's easy to have a real calm, considerate view. I'm not saying anything about Toralf. I mean, Toralf seems like an awesome dude. He's one of the arena boys. That's really sweet. But like in general, the people who like Andre Mengucci's been having a great time these last couple of years because he's also been winning it all. And I'm not saying that that he would feel differently if he weren't. But in general, I've found it's easier to have fun when things are going well, and it can be harder when they're not. Also, I think that some people derive kind of different motivations from different sources. I know some people who get really frustrated and really worked up over losses, but that's part of what drives them to excel, and that actually makes them more effective at playing and doing better. And there's some people who take it easy and don't stress about it, and that also helps them. It's kind of just depends on what motivates you and what drives you. Though in general, it's better not to be frustrated because that's not a very pleasant feeling. Yeah. However, as I've said before in previous episodes, frustration is also pretty important in terms of motivation and in terms of making things sticky. So
yeah, that's true.
I'm always of the opinion that it's okay to care, and it's great if you can just you enjoy something, have fun, and not be worked out over the wins or the losses. I think that's a great way to approach life. But I also think it's really important that you care about the outcome. And if that means that sometimes you end up getting a little bit more invested in it, that's totally fine too. Some of the things I consider the most important, I felt bad when I didn't get there, but that's part of why they're appealing. So
yeah, that is actually my approach as well. I actually. It's weird. I actually try to get away from that feeling of oh, whatever, we'll just see what happens. I'm like, no, I want to do well, I want to focus and concentrate and really feel like I played the best I could play, at that time. And so,
yeah. And look, sometimes I can handle, losses with equanimity and just, shrug it off. All's another tournament, all's another day. And sometimes it's like, man, that one really stings. So
yeah.
Whatever kind of gets you going and whatever you're having fun with. Obviously, if you get too frustrated, maybe this isn't the right thing for you, and and all that. But I think in general, there's no one way you're supposed to feel or supposed to react. You feel the way you feel.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You've given me license to now flip the table when I lose and curse out my opponent. And if anybody asks me,
oh yeah, that'd be great.
I'll tell them it was Luis Scott-Vargas' idea because this is how I feel and I'm owning it. Gosh darn it. All right, fine. I won't do that. But I'm looking forward to it. And I'll let everybody know next week how it went one way or the other. And I'll be posting updates on Twitter and stuff. Speaking of Twitter, if you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find all things related to this podcast at lrcast.com. Don't forget about the buy list bonanza. That's coming up starting on March 1st. Again, every order that you put in of $25 or more in total, actual value, not the store trade in, but in the actual value, will put you in for the monthly giveaway drawing that's happening at the end. And each day, if you submit a buy list order of $25 or more, you will be entered into the daily giveaway for the golden ticket, the Ikoria booster box, and the daily double. And don't forget, perhaps it's funny because there's all these big headlines for the Byless Bonanza, but maybe the most important one is you're getting this 35% store credit bonus for whatever you do, no matter what, whether you win a drawing or not. And that's guaranteed to be the best value you can get as far as, selling it back, because 35% is just awesome. I mean, that is a sweet, sweet way to turn those rares into booster boxes or singles or whatever it is you happen to need. So make sure you check that out. That's channelfireball.com/buylist for that. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks so much for hanging out, and we'll see you next week.
So we didn't have a show last week, so we never got a chance to mention it, but we know now that Limited actually is not going to be played at the next round of Players Tours.
Mm-hmm.
We know that it's not going to be in Houston in the finals, and then it's not going to be in the 3 Players Tours after that. And I kind of know where you stand on that.
Yeah, so that one's off, and then the next chunk of them will have Limited again. Right,
they have it again. Mm-hmm. But we're basically, Ikoria is never going to get played at one of these premier events.
Right. And it's actually bittersweet for me because on one hand, the reasoning, I believe, they haven't actually given any official reasoning, but just like reading the tea leaves, is that those events take place basically the same weekend that the set comes out. And that is logistically difficult. It's hard for the players because they haven't really had a chance to practice. And I have now commentated 2 or 3 like professional level events, either the weekend that this cards came out, or even in one case, the weekend before the cards, before the pre-release actually. And it is hard. It's really tough to commentate Limited when you barely know what the cards even are. Like I could, that's the tutu that has the thing versus how they interact within the context of a format. And you're just kind of going, well, I guess this player is going to play this card and then attack with it. Cause I'm just looking at my co-commentator like, I don't know if it's good or not. I haven't even played a game with it. So on that hand, I'm good. On the other hand, it's like, man, it's going to be 2 constructed formats. And I know they perform better on the stream. I get it. And I can see the reasoning for trying it out if that is why they're doing it as well. But it does bum me out a little bit.
Yeah, I wanted to basically just say for, the folks listening who presumably are fans of Limited, that it's not the end of the world. Like, I actually think that there are, like you said, like, look, I'm as someone who's actually going to be playing in these things, I am of course disappointed. As someone who loves Limited, I would rather there be more rather than less. But one thing that I think is cool is that, we're gonna get Limited back the rotation after that. So whatever the set is post Ikoria, and I think that it is hopefully a symptom of them having events on release weekend, which I do think is generally better. I think those events are more fun and more interesting to watch. And Limited's not going away forever or anything like that, at least not yet. So I think that we're gonna still see Limited highlighted in high level play, but in this particular case, it won't be parts of these tournaments. And even though I would prefer that not be the case, my initial reaction was worse than where it ended up being. It's only 1 season off, and it's certainly possible that it ends up not repeating, like it ends up not happening again, that we miss out on Limited.
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to add to that is when I do see people talk about it online and stuff, it does bother me when people equate it simply to viewership.
Yes,
right.
I think
as if the only reason, as if the only choices that are made on the broadcast are simply slaves to viewership. Right. It's just like it's just we put the thing on the air that gets the most viewership. Well, I can think of a lot of things that would get a lot more viewership than what we do, but they wouldn't line up with the company's values, or they wouldn't be, something that they would benefit the game as a whole, or add to the marketing push or whatever. And I believe that Limited is a really key, important part of onboarding new players to Magic specifically, because if you've ever been a brand new player and been to a local card game store where you're like, hey, I'm gonna play some standard, and somebody's like rare land, mythic rare, kill your, common. And you're just like, what? I can't even compete with these cards. And you go, how much was your deck? And they're like $350. And you're just like, screw this. Like, I don't have these cards. I'm not going to invest this much straight away. I can't compete. So why should I play? Where Limited offers this even playing field where everybody starts with the same resources at the beginning. And on top of it, it allows you to build a collection up over time that you can then start trading or selling or whatever and working into the constructed deck that you want. And then also there is admittedly not as big, it doesn't translate as well to the screen, but the people that do watch Limited love it. I mean, they are there to see people draft and they absolutely go nuts for it. And those people are important too. I'm not saying that they necessarily should be fully catered to, but, completely dismissing them, I think is incorrect as well. So there's other reasons besides just straight up viewership to decide what to put on camera at major events. So keep those in mind when you're kind of breaking it down on what would I do if I were in their seat type scenario.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think it's important that Magic tournaments don't just get optimized for viewers, because I think that would lead us away from some of the core strengths of Magic, like the most fun game to play, for example.
Yeah.
So anyways, Limited fans, it's not, this isn't like necessarily the next direction I would want to see this go, but it's also definitely not the end of the road for Limited. And I hope that you're not taking